Ladies and gentlemen, this is Gemma Beall, and welcome to Attaining the Second Cognition. A lot of you have noticed that Doug has taken down his channel, and you've found your way to our channel where we have uploaded all of our videos that we worked in collaboration with Doug and others to this channel. We want to welcome you to our channel. When we were collaborating with Doug on these videos, we were sharing truth and pointing out half-truths and lies, but we were more focused on the truth and lies of the world around us. Moving forward, we are transitioning to information that will be focusing on the truth and lies within the mind. Any journey of a spiritual nature requires self-introspection, but to truly do that, at some point you have to stop looking at the external world and look within to see the effects the external world has had on us individually from our lifetime exposure to the indoctrination from the external world. I know some people are probably thinking, "Don't shrink me." But the truth of the matter is, if you want to change your life and understand you on all levels, you have to start shrinking yourself in order to do that. If you do not want to change who you are at the deepest level to something better, then this channel is probably not for you. As with Doug's channel, everything that is being presented, past videos and future videos we make, will be on a take it or leave it basis. If you like the material and wish to consider it, fantastic. Please subscribe and visit frequently. But if you don't like it and choose not to consider anything, fantastic. Please unsubscribe and carry on with your journey. We wish you well. Today's topic is going to be about transitions and some things that we've learned and observed over the last year on our own journeys of producing these videos. We will be sharing with you some of the transitions that we've made over the last 6 months and how transitions are not always a bad thing. And we will be sharing some of the things that we found not appealing of ego nature where our videos in presenting information to the public are concerned, and show you how, if the information applies to you, to transition yourself out of that ego behavior. In the last few videos on Doug's channel, Doug mentioned that we would be taking a hiatus in order to dedicate our time to other matters in our lives that require our attention and time. So the work we've been doing on his channel and in our written works had to take a back seat to life. Unfortunately, Doug's life issues have required that he no longer has the time to contribute to our collaborative efforts, and we wish him well in this journey. But Endel and I and a few others that have also contributed to these videos will at some point resume sharing our journeys with you, but it will not be at the back-breaking pace that we did last year. I would like to begin this presentation explaining what we have been doing with our written work and our videos that hasn't been completely explained in details in our work. If you watched the videos when they were on Doug's channel and followed the comments thread, it had been explained that what we are sharing in all of our works is our personal journeys and what we have learned on our path at the time the material was written and produced. Have our perspectives changed? Of course they have, because each of our journeys transitions us from one level of awareness to the next as we raise our perceptual and cognitive awareness. Therefore, how we perceived things back then has changed. Some of it may be similar, just more clarified understandings and realizations of the material, but some of it has been altered because our awareness wasn't developed enough to see the larger picture. We experienced a lot of positive support in these videos when they were on Doug's channel, but we also experienced a lot of negative comments from people that just do not understand that these are our journeys and what we've learned as we've raised our awareness. The reasons we have disabled the comments is because there is no point in giving the negative Nellies a platform to perpetuate their first cognition lack of understanding of what we share. We're not sharing our journeys for others to like or dislike, agree with or disagree with. We are sharing them for those that want to listen, learn, and grow within themselves, and listening to another's personal journey can give the listener food for thought on their own journey if they take the time and consider the information within themselves and how it may or may not apply to their own journey. We are not trying to become anyone's guru, and we have explained this time and time again. We are only sharing as a point of consideration. We are showing you through our words how we have become our own authority on our own journeys, so you can see that you too can do the same on your journey. If you choose not to go that route and become your own authority and get away from the indoctrinated state that we've all been forced into, then that is certainly what you need to do for your path. For our paths, though, we will continue to share our journeys and what we have learned in removing ourselves from the indoctrination, so others that want to expand themselves have an example that it can be done. 2016 was a whirlwind experience for all of us because we had the Soika push to share what we have shared. But as 2016 crept to an end, life intervened for all of us and gave us several months of contemplation and continual growth without the distraction of writing scripts and producing videos. It is a very eye-opening experience sharing one's journey with others, and although a lot of what we shared was observations we made about our own selves from our path of discovery, sharing with others gave us a whole different perspective on ego and human nature that we didn't see until now, not even within our own selves. It is heavily ingrained in the ego nature that we always look outside of ourselves for everything. When we see something wrong with the world around us, we always look at how everyone else contributes to what is wrong, but rarely do we look within to see how we are just as guilty and culpable as everyone else. What I will be pointing out in this presentation is not to make fun or shame anyone, nor it is a personal attack on anyone. It is merely observations from the comments on our presentations that I am pointing out. Only you, the listener, knows if this applies to you or not if you do an honest internal analysis. I remember when I was studying psychology, everyone in class was going through and learning all the machinations that make up the ego nature, and I vividly remember the professor saying, "If you're truly honest with yourselves, you will come to understand that everyone is crazy, including you." What the professor meant is that there isn't any psychological condition, and they do consider all human behavior a psychological condition, that everyone doesn't exude in some form or fashion. Like with any addiction, you can't beat the addiction if you won't acknowledge you are addicted, and right now humanity is addicted to ego nature. But do they have to be? One of the biggest irritants we encountered on the video comments was the incessant need for debate of the material that we present, or that they felt the need to supply material from others out there, assuming we hadn't already digested the material ourselves. We've seen many comments such as, "You're wrong," or, "Well, that's not my experience," or, "That's not what so-and-so says." All of these are examples of predictable defensive responses and are shared because of the indoctrinated duality thinking that we have had forced upon us. There is nothing in this reality that any of us experience that isn't molded by our perceptions. Our perceptions have been fed to us since the day we were born by others, so anything that we experience is interpreted through the perceptual filters of others, not our own. The fact that most of the contributors to these scripts have experienced what we share and have perceived it from a higher level of awareness after removing our indoctrinated filters proves that we're not wrong. Just because you personally have not experienced something similar to our experience or perceived it in a similar manner outside of your perceptual filters does not mean that we're wrong or that we're even right. The whole right-wrong duality thinking is just another perceptual filter that we've all had forced upon us. "Well, that's not my experience" is a hollow statement because all your experience was to you is a perception. How you perceive it may have been limited by your filters, but until you reanalyze your own experience from an expanded level of awareness, you won't know for sure. The same could be said about so-and-so. How do you know they have interpreted it correctly? Because you agree with it out of confirmation bias? How I know about these filters and altering perceptions is because in the 2 years I've spent sharing my journeys through books and videos, I've had to revisit my own experiences to share them with others, and I saw in hindsight my own expanded awareness by how much my perceptions of my own experiences have changed and continue to change as I've had more experiences and more information and higher raised awareness. The one thing I could state for a fact is if you limit yourself to the initial perception you formed and limit the amount of information you're willing to consider, you'll never find out. Perceptions are funny things. If you look back over your life, I'm sure each one of you can see areas where your initial perception has changed when revisited at a later time. A prime example that I'm sure everyone has experienced is revisiting your school from childhood after you've become an adult. I remember my early years in school and how my schools looked. I remember in the second grade having to go back to my kindergarten school and thought, wow, everything looks so tiny. I don't remember everything being this small. In middle school, I had to go back to my second grade school and experience the same feeling that everything looked so much smaller than I remembered it. The same happened again when I visited my high school 10 years after graduation. The desks and chairs didn't look as small, but the size of the school didn't appear as large as I remember it being. All of these examples are altered perceptions. When I was little, the desks and chairs were the right size for my little body, but as I grew up, they were tiny in comparison to the desks and chairs that fit my body now. If you think about the span of your life, how many times have you perceived something as one way when you experienced it, only to look back in hindsight and see that your perception has changed? As an exercise for you to try now, look back at your life 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, and focus on how much you changed and what your perceptions were back then and what they are now. The right or wrong mentality was one of my personal hang-ups. If something wasn't right, it had to be wrong. There was no middle ground in my realm of thinking back in those days, and I see a lot of people with that same mentality now. The universe is constantly moving and flowing and growing, and it is never stagnating. As a being of this universe, it makes no sense in an ever-changing cosmos to stagnate by holding on to thoughts, beliefs, or behaviors that will not allow you room to grow, not mentally, cognitively, or spiritually. Do you do this? Do you reside in the limited duality thinking? These are questions that only you can answer for yourself. In our Words and Language video, we discuss words and language and how the meaning of words vary as do the perceptions of the meaning of words from person to person. You will find in a lot of our videos and in our writing, I'm constantly defining words because I want the reader or the listener to understand certain words and how I mean them when I speak. There are 3 main reasons that there are miscommunications between people. 1, the person speaking isn't properly conveying what they want to say. 2, the person listening isn't really listening to what's being said. 3, the person listening has a different perception of the meaning of the words than the person speaking the words. Everyone interprets things they read or hear based off their pre-existing knowledge, pre-existing experiences, and understanding of words. But their understanding isn't always accurate to the understanding that the speaker of those same words. Sometimes the speaker uses words that don't mean what they think they mean. I experience a lot of people that just don't listen. It's a huge but typical and predictable ego habit to only hear so much of a message before their brain locks on certain words and they make assumptions about the speaker or what the speaker is saying without mentally processing the rest of the words. The topic of discussion doesn't really matter either. One could be talking about the weather or they could be talking about a spiritual path. This is something I encounter daily from others, and it's still a habit that I catch myself feeling the habitual impulse to do. The hapim, or ego, is a cataloger of information, and when a person is operating with the ego in control, the habit of measuring information against already existing information in their personal database, especially if the words conflict or contradict any held beliefs. The hapim program kicks into gear, and any information being shared at that moment gets lost to the defensive mode of the ego. Do you do this? Have you even analyzed your own self with this as your focus of study to know whether you do this or not? Another thing that Endel and I have learned over the years of working with others, either through our jobs or in our Soika work, is that everyone learns differently. And learning can be expanded or hindered by a misunderstanding of the meanings of words or a string of words and what they relate. It could also be hindered by an ego defensive mode as well. It is very difficult to write broadly and share our experiences because of this. One of the biggest complaints we've heard about our work is the repetitive nature of the material, but when we write, we take into consideration these differences in learning styles and abilities and explain concepts in different manners for others to understand in their learning style. If you have found yourself complaining about the repetition, Did it ever occur to you that someone else may not understand something explained in the manner that you understood it? They may need it explained in another manner in order to understand it, and we always take that into consideration. I'm going to share an experience about misunderstanding that I've encountered many, many times to show the difference in mentality where information is concerned. In my day job, for more than 20 years, I have been responsible for creating policies and procedures and then training others in these policies and procedures. Generally, because I do understand that everyone learns in different manners, I have a habit of saying, "Does this make sense?" once I've finished explaining something. The reason I do so is because it is my job as an effective trainer to train the person in the best manner that suits their learning style. If how I explain something doesn't make sense, it's my job, literally, to explain it in a manner that they will understand. I've had several people tell me not to be so insecure about my ability to communicate. The first time this was said to me, I was perplexed because I'm not insecure about my ability to communicate. So I asked them why they perceived me as being insecure. Their response was because at the end I asked, "Does this make sense?" To these people, they perceived my asking this question was because I was unsure of myself or insecure within myself where communicating with others is concerned. I've also had people get mad at me for asking, "Does this make sense?" because they assumed I was questioning their intelligence by asking. Both situations are instances of people making an assumption and reaching an incorrect conclusion. One scenario presents the assumption that I was insecure. The other assumption is that I was being condescending. Neither of these assumptions were correct. Never once have I had anyone ask me, "Why do you ask, does this make sense?" Humans have been conditioned to form perceptions and make assumptions based on what we see or hear. We're never taught to ask why, particularly not within our own mind about our own behaviors and habits. Until the first person told me to not be so insecure, I never questioned myself about why I asked, "Does this make sense?" When I thought about it, at first I was thinking, was this something I picked up from someone else? But in reviewing my personal history, I realized I created this habit because I was training others using only one method, and nobody would tell me they didn't understand the instructions. Then frustration would happen with me and with the other person because they didn't understand the instructions, but they wouldn't tell me they didn't understand. Then they would perform the action incorrectly and make mistakes. It was hearing, "I didn't understand when you explained it," that I realized that different people learn differently, and it was up to me to explain it in the manner through which they understood the information, not always the manner in which I understand it. Although this is a 3D example of how learning takes place, this also translates to our work in the Soika path because there is such erroneous information out there by people that do not want any of us to understand and become powerful in our own right. There are a lot of subjects in the realm of metaphysics that can and do have many assumed interpretations, and the typical interpretations that are presented by those that want to keep us controlled are reasonable enough to make sense, but they don't make sense from a higher level of perceptual awareness once you begin to question and critically analyze it. The greatest example is that of the concept of God. Yes, I call it a concept, and the concept has many names: the universe, creator, source, Yahweh, Allah, etc., etc., etc. How many people realize that the omnipotent moving force in their own lives is their own spirit, their Soika? It's not something outside of you. It is you, and you are not me, or him, or her, or the concept of God, or anyone else. Although the thought that created this single creator concept, whatever it is, may or may not have come from a singular consciousness, that singularity, if it was a singularity, is not the arbiter of creation, nor did it create everything, and you are not going to return to it when your form dies. This is the most difficult truth for people to understand because they are interpreting their own experiences using the filters that have been handed down for millennia from our ancestors from many different angles. If you transcend accepting things you've been told your whole life and remove your brain's indoctrination from the equation and your emotional attachments to the information, What does your Soika tell you? A lot of people will tell you otherwise, and they feel the fear when their spirit reveals this truth. That fear is the Hapim ego virus in control of your mind, and people will allow that fear to dictate what they think they know from their filters instead of allowing the knowing of the information to fill them with the knowledge of actual truth. The truth never brings fear. It never brings emotions front and center in your mind or your body. It only brings an internal knowing of what is. Any emotion that this information brings is all at the hands of your internal controller, the Hapim virus, your ego. How long do you intend to allow it to guide you instead of allowing your Soika to show you the truth? As a species, we've all been indoctrinated to be in a continual state of conflict. If we aren't starting or perpetuating conflict with others, then we're conflicting internally within ourselves over many things. Look at your life. How much conflict do you have in your mind? How much conflict do you have between your Soika and your physical body? How much conflict do you have around you in your personal space? How much conflict do you see around you in the world? How much of the conflict do you create or participate in? Everyone makes the assumption that they're entitled to their own opinion. However, not many realize the conclusion of that assumption is erroneous. I know you're probably going to call bullshit over that statement, but it's the actual truth. Any entitlement that anyone has over their opinion stops at the end of their nose and of their experience. What I mean when I say this is that you are free to opine in your mind about anything in this reality, but where things that are none of your concern or involved in your direct reality, your opinion doesn't mean shit. Sure, you're allowed to formulate that opinion, but no, you're not allowed to force it on society at large when your opinion is on matters that have nothing to do with your life. To force your opinion on another person at your uninvited behest, you are doing nothing but trespassing on another. Every time some churchgoers come knocking on my door and come stick their flyers on my property, they're trespassing, not just on my property, but me personally. The homophobes standing on the street corner spewing their vile diatribes are trespassing on everyone. Do you know what makes each of these instances a trespass? The churchgoers, regardless if they're preaching their beliefs, those beliefs are still assumptions and opinions that do not belong on my private property, and they do not have the right to force their preachy preach on me or anyone else. They are uninvited on many levels. The homophobe on the street is trespassing on everyone because they are spewing an opinion on something that is none of their business. What others do in their private life and their private time is none of their business. It doesn't matter if they are in public. They have every right to be there, living their lives as they deem fit without hassle from anyone else, as long as they are not harming others, and they aren't. This is what most people in society don't understand. Why? Because we've been indoctrinated that we are entitled to share our opinions and that our opinions always hold importance when they really don't, at least not all of the time. This is really the hardest concept for everyone to grasp because we've been so indoctrinated with it as just the way everyone functions, but it's the worst kind of trespassing on others. Endo goes into more details about this in his upcoming book, No Trespassing. I know that many will think, well, what makes you doing this video any different than the guy standing on the street corner? And I'll explain what makes it different. The street corner is public property, so in essence, it belongs to everyone. YouTube is also public property, however, it allows others to set up channels and has terms of service to give the channel owner rights and responsibilities over the content. Therefore, this channel is my property. Your house is your property, and as your property, you have the choice to say what is acceptable in your house and what isn't. I personally do not go to other YouTube channels and post comments unless it will positively contribute to the contents. Even if I disagree with a particular video, I have enough respect for the channel owner and their property to keep my opinion or even my truth to myself. We don't seek people out to come and visit the channel. It's open to all who want to consider, and it will be closed to those that don't, but it's their choice, not mine. With this information at hand, look at your own life and how others have trespassed on you in this manner, or how you've trespassed on others in the same manner. This next observation will probably be the hardest for people to understand, but is by far the most common indoctrinated behavior I've witnessed in everyone, including myself at one time. That behavior is allowing your like or dislike to form your assumptions and perceptions as their basis. It's a common behavior that has been studied in great detail in the field of psychology, and this is how, when you like someone, you are more willing to listen to them and believe anything and everything they say because you like them. It doesn't matter if they are speaking truth or telling outright lies. By the same token, if you form a dislike for someone, you will automatically discount anything this person says because you don't like them, even if they are telling you the straight up honest truth. We experience this all the time in our videos when the comments threads were active. When we began working with Doug in collaboration on these videos, well, it was mostly Endel and Doug at first, and then I became involved, and then some others contributed as well. We all agreed that we were not going to state who said what in writing the scripts because ultimately the messages are far more important than the personality of any of us messengers. We've had people absolutely twist off on Endel in the threads, calling him everything negative under the sun and telling him he needs to learn from Doug, and then quote several awesome quotes from the video. The irony is, those words that were quoted were Endel's contributions to the script, not Doug's. I've seen others state that they don't like Doug's presentation style or his topics in these videos, but loves Endel work, not knowing that the content in the particular video they held up as an example was solely Doug's contribution. I've also seen many people that pretty much hate me and spoke about it many times in the comments, but their favorite video was the one that was solely my contribution. So pretty much as long as everyone thought Doug was doing these videos on his own and they were his and his alone, even though he repeatedly talked about the content being done as a collaborative project with us and others, people's perceptions revolved around Doug and his persona where these videos were concerned because he was the one speaking the words and producing the videos. If you look at the world around us, this mentality is prevalent in society. Hollywood actors get the good roles that people go see their movies. How many times have you gone to see a movie only because you like the leading actor? If the actor loses their appeal to the public and doesn't make box office hits, then their careers suffer because nobody pays to see their movies. This is a cult of personality. If you ask yourself how many times have you allowed the influence of your likes or dislikes, cognitive filters, to influence not only whether you listen to a message or not, but allow it to color whether you agree with the message or not. I want to thank everyone that has taken the time to listen and consider the information. I hope I left you with some good questions to ask yourself to help you with your internal journey if you choose. I also want to thank the subscribers that have migrated to our channel and all the new subscribers that come along. Until next time, take care.